leaders who treat people with dignity and respect get the best results, Lynn. So, some people say, well, that doesn't sound all that complicated. But however, it's kind of something people acknowledge in theory, but often don't practice. And, leadership in a way is kind of got some science to it. But, every person's different, every situation's different. Just look at what we're dealing with now with the global crisis. It requires a different type of leadership to the one that we would have had before.
Welcome to the Kind Boss podcast, brought to you by Outsourcing Angel, an Australian-based social enterprise that specializes in helping business owners free up their time and reduce staffing costs while helping to create employment opportunities for people in developing countries. Visit outsourcingangel.com today. Now, let me welcome your host, Linh Podetti.
Hello, kind listeners. I'm your host, Linh Podetti. Today, we'll be speaking to our kind boss, Brian Donovan, Director of Donovan Leadership. Brian is an executive coach with over 40 years experience working with senior leaders in companies like Telstra and nonprofit group, the IT Skills Hub. His programs enable leaders to achieve stretch results beyond what they thought possible and to make the difference they are committed to making. Listen on as he shows you how to become a leader who achieves big results while treating people with dignity and respect. And as a special gift, Brian is giving our audience a free copy of his book, Leadership is Changing the Game. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Kind Boss series. And today I have Brian Donovan. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Lynn. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, great chatting with you again. I know we've caught up once before, and I was really inspired by the many years of experience that you're in leadership and the fact that you're a gentle soul. You really do fit right in with our Kind Boss series. So today I want to talk more about leadership, but the most interesting part that intrigues me is your term calling gentle leadership. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Lynn. And yeah, thanks for acknowledging my many years of experience. That's what the grey hair is for. There's lots of bruises and scars along the way too. And so I've tried to put that into some of the material that I've written. And the latest book is called The Gentle Art of Leadership, as you said. And I'm co-authoring it with a good friend of mine called Dean Phelan. Sort of coming in thesis is that leaders who treat people with dignity and respect get the best results, Lynn. So, some people say, well, that doesn't sound all that complicated. But however, it's kind of something people acknowledge in theory, but often don't practice. And, leadership in a way is kind of got some science to it. But, every person's different, every situation's different. Just look at what we're dealing with now with the global crisis. It requires a different type of leadership to the one that we would have had before. So each time it's kind of more like an art form. And that gentle part of it is not soft, not compliant. It's gentle, treating people well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so when it comes to an art, are you saying that it can be learned? Like if you sort of were considering yourself as this kind of really tough person, but what you're saying is that you can still change, right? You don't always have to be this kind of hard ass person. You can learn the art of being more kinder and gentle, right?
I believe so, Lynn. Yes. I think anyone can if they're willing. If they're not willing, then it doesn't matter how good the coach is they've got, nothing's going to change. But if they're willing, then any kind of change is possible. For leaders who see that actually you get better results. If you treat people well, you actually do get better results. So, it's kind of appealing to most people in business want results. They're there to do something, add value, get some runs on the board. If we thought that autocratic style, command control style, if we thought that got you the best results, well, we'd write that book, but that's not the case. Most people will tell you from their personal experience, the great bosses they had cared about them, took an interest in them. I know that you do that in your leadership. You take an interest in the people around you. It makes a difference. Seems like small things, but, this is people you're dealing with. So, yeah, even the ones who think, oh, no, this all sounds a bit soft and, it's really not for me. I'm just about focusing on results. Well, you focus on results through building good relationships with the people around you.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me, you really do require patience. It's not one of those things where you're like rushing this relationship with your team. You're going to have to like look at the big picture and see that the result will come, but it might not come right now when you want it. Right. And does it also mean that you have to let go of too much of really KPI driven so much and forgetting that ultimately the result will come? And can you elaborate a bit more around that? Yeah.
There's a couple of bits to your, I like the word patience. It's a bit like your financial investments, isn't it? If you're constantly withdrawing, well, you've got nothing left, but you investing, then you're there for the longer term. So you really have to, maybe right now you don't want to be looking too much at your investments. You've got to be thinking longer term. So patience is a good word. You're kind of investing in people, building their own leadership capability. And, I heard a good example in the pandemic that, one area really focused on getting people well set up at home. How were they going? Are they set up all right? What concerns do they have? Got all that straight, got all that flat. And now their KPIs are amazing. They're blitzing it. So you're right. It's kind of a bit of patience. You don't just rush for, right, get your results out. We want the same results that you were getting at work now produced remotely. There's kind of a working with people. And what was the other part of your question?
In terms of fast, I guess you did answer it as well, in that the results will come later on. I guess weighing in with the fact that you want KPIs met and results achieved, but at the same time, in order to get the ultimate result, you need time. You need. Yes. I think you kind of covered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll just add on that KPIs thing, Lynn, that really you'll get bigger results through investing in people. If you really develop them and trust them and give them the scope to be as great as they can be, like the best version of themselves is one way of putting it, then they'll surprise you actually with what results they'll produce. It may be well beyond. I'm thinking of a client I worked with, and he did a lot of work around getting his people on side and getting them focused around a vision. And at some point they called him out and said, come and have a look and see what we've done. And when he went out there, he was like, wow, this is amazing. They've taken it even further than I thought, like consistent with his vision. Just as an aside, Len, his first reaction though was, but they were talking about it like it was something that they thought of, but it was really my idea. And it was almost in the moment he caught himself just, I think like you just did. Well, okay, well, that's all right, isn't it? That they think it's something that they did. It's okay that they have such ownership of it, such buy-in, that they believe it's theirs. So he doesn't really need the kudos. It kind of gets to another part of your question about, what have you got to let go of?
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned one kind of limiting belief there. Like sometimes a leader might not excel in their role because they're thinking they need to have the credit for everything, when ultimately the result is that you achieve that outcome. Whether you do it or your team do it, it doesn't matter, whether it's your idea or not. What are the other kind of limiting beliefs that can sabotage a leader? Like that's just one example. Any other ones that you could share?
Yes. Well, look, there's some classic ones just from my own. I mentioned before about all this grey hair I've got and the lessons I learned along the way. Yeah. For me, I guess there's like a default way that we think about ourselves. You kind of encounter some stress or some, the game gets bigger in some way. Then what's likely to come up is, as you said, some self-limiting belief. And my version of it would be, I'm not smart enough. Like I'm not really that intelligent enough. It was kind of like a barrier to what I could accomplish if I was just thinking that. So it's kind of like you got to catch it, say, oh, there it is, there goes that. So there's some big thing got to occur. My belief kicks in. Oh, maybe I'm not smart enough. I can thank it for sharing and then find another place to stand, if you like. You know what I mean? Like stand somewhere versus just getting blown along by the current. Stand somewhere and go, well, actually, it's really about me adding value. So how can I add value? And it kind of takes my focus off me and puts it onto the other person and the team. And yeah, so that's an example of how beliefs can get in the way of a lot of what we want to accomplish. We can be our own worst enemy in lots of ways.
Yeah. And when it comes to leadership, I think it's easy to be a good leader when things are going well and everything just flows and money's flowing in. But of course, in life, it's not realistic to have things always working out, right? And so do you think that during challenging time is kind of that moment where it shows whether it kind of exposes the leader, whether you're going to be that inspiring leader or the kind of scaredy cat leader?
I do, Lynn. I do. I think you're right on the money that really leadership's pretty easy when everything's going well. What's there to do? You got a good team, you just turn up and, give them a pat on the back. It's all great. But it's when times are tough. And really, I think as you're pointing to, times are always tough. There's no place for equilibrium, I think, in business. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. So it's really the opportunity when times are tough to step outside your comfort zone and really make big things happen, like turn adversity into opportunity. Now, I'm not saying being opportunistic, I'm just meaning leadership's going to be so important during this. It is currently during this crisis and post this crisis. We're going to need people who can fulfill what I think is the definition of leadership, which is you change the game. First book I wrote called Leadership is Changing the Game. And that kind of gets at what you're asking, that the job of the leader is to take us somewhere new. It's to kind of take us in a new direction, change the game somewhere. Now, we do need people who can manage. And by management, I mean keep things going. Think about your own business. You've got a lot of great people who keep things going. You need that. But, you as the leader, you've got to have your eye on the future, don't you? Where can we take this? And, what's my vision of what's possible? And look, that's uncomfortable. And, if you're not happy outside your comfort zone, don't get into leadership.
Yeah. And, with your experience working in corporations like Telstra and whatever else, do you see that there is more challenges in the leadership roles, the bigger the company is, in a sense? When I was working in a corporation long time ago for only a short period of time, I can already see that a lot of managers sort of automatically people will start to get promoted and become a manager, become a leader when they are not really leaders, if you know what I mean. They kind of were given that role, but they don't even like people. It became this, I guess that's where the work politics is. But yeah, what are the things that you've witnessed in kind of bigger corporations when it came to people being leaders when they shouldn't be a leader or whatever else?
Yeah, look, I think just the complexion of the issues is slightly different, but it's fundamentally the same in my experience. So I did work in a big corporation, as you said, Telstra in Australia. At the time, was probably one of the largest companies. And so, you got lots of complexity of relationships and so on. I also then was a CEO of a not-for-profit business, which had 10 or 12 people in. And I think the commonality is wherever you've got people, you've got leadership challenges, because people are not, they're not robots. They don't necessarily operate logically. They bring their emotions to work and, all their ambitions and, their conversations about themselves. They bring all that to work. So really the job of the leader is to kind of understand the people you've got to work with, and so whether that's large company or whether that's in a smaller business, there's always some transitions I think you've got to go through. And then the book I wrote about Leadership is Changing the Game was really about the transitions I saw in a large company like Telstra, where I worked with a lot of really brilliant technical people, great experts in their subject matter experts. In their field, they're preeminent. But then, as you said, they often get their career path takes them into leadership, and there's no real support for that. They're just thrust in the deep end. And now the problem changes from technical problems where you've got to solve some data or analyze some issue to now how do you get results through people? And people in small businesses also encounter a similar thing. The person who's the brilliant founder of a business, had some bright idea, let's say it's a tech business, may not be the one unless they're willing to reinvent themselves. And we could come to reinvention if you like. There's a kind of a reinvention, a transition from solving technical problems to now solving people problems.
Yeah.
Want to make a difference in others' lives? Join us in providing food, medical supplies, and daily living necessities to tribal communities living in extreme poverty in the Philippines. For as little as $50, you can feed a whole village and have peace of mind that 100% of your donations goes directly to those in need. Be a part of our OA Love projects and visit 𝙤𝙤𝙙𝙬𝙤.com.
I hear two things here. So let's say if I'm in a big company and I'm one of the leader who's trying to promote someone else to take a leadership role which is under me, is it important to not just promote them in the new job, but also provide them a lot of leadership training and people skill training so that they could do a better job at that rather than just kind of throw them in the deep end, right? And if I was a self-employed, owning my own business, I also need to train myself to then become not someone, the new skills of actually how to manage the people I'm hiring. If you still have that technical mindset, you're going to be doing your job and you're not spending any time leading.
That's exactly, yeah. I think it was Tom Peters who said your job as a leader is not to create followers, it's to create other leaders. Yeah, so really that's, in either scenario, that's your job. And one of the reinventions I think people need to make who've come from some kind of subject matter specialty area, they've got to reinvent their strength. So maybe your strength when you were a technical problem solver was you were great at doing things. Often they're the people who will work through the night, just get the job done, whatever it takes. They're fantastic doers. But now in leadership, you're going to burn out pretty quick if you're the one trying to do everything. You're the one saying, I can't really get good people. And, it's much easier to do it myself. It just doesn't scale, Lynn, does it? Mm-hmm. You need that ability to think about it as you've got to cause results. So whereas before, as an expert, you were the one doing it, now what you've got to do is cause the results. And there's lots of ways you cause people to be great leaders. You encourage them, you sometimes hold them accountable, you maybe need to be firm with them, there's challenge them. There's all kinds of ways that you can cause people to produce big results. But that's the reinvention you need to go through. Part of the way that you build your influence as a leader is to multiply yourself through being able to cause results.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, Brian, let's talk about some of these fun things about you. So in this segment, it's called the high five. So I'm going to ask you 5 fun questions. It's this or that. All you do is choose a choice between the two and just elaborate a little bit so we get to know you a little bit. And they're just fun little choices. Sometimes people find it's quite difficult to choose because both of them are so good. Number 1 is cake or ice cream?
Well, cake, but it really depends on whether it's a beautiful cake or not.
Cake?
Like the boiled fruitcake my mum used to make. That would be great.
All right, cake it is. Number 2, camping in a caravan or in a tent?
Definitely caravan. Maybe one time it would have been camping, but those comforts are now so nice to have.
Yeah, tent is not very comfortable, is it? I don't know if I've ever been in a caravan before, but definitely something I want to do later on in life. Caravanning around Australia or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Number 3, winter or summer?
Definitely summer. Yeah, just now it's starting to change in Melbourne. I'm like, oh no, where's that warm weather gone? It's just so nice. You feel brighter when the sun's out, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yep. 4th, inspiration or motivation? That's
a great one. I think I'm going for inspiration, on the basis that inspiration will motivate you. Like I think the way I think about it is if your future is bigger than your past, that's what's going to motivate you.
Yeah,
something
I like that.
In front of you.
Yep. Finally, wealth or freedom?
Well, freedom. Not to say that wealth doesn't have some attraction, but yeah, I mean, that's why I got into my own business. I'm guessing that's why you're in it too, that it's just great to have that freedom, that flexibility, to be your own master.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it leads me to the next question is that sometimes in business or when you're working in a career, you want the money to buy you to have the freedom, but then you forgot your ultimate goal. You're caught in the ever making more money, and you
Yes.
don't have that freedom. And, the more people I come across who pass away when they're really young, I just realize how short life is. And I just realized as leaders or as business owners or anything, you need to kind of reprioritize your goals. It's not all about financial. It's really about that time. What's your take on around the kind of time freedom versus financial freedom, I guess?
Yeah, no, great. Look, I talk to a lot of people about their careers, Lynn, and it's a concern for a lot of people. They're either in a job that they don't like, or they're maybe in the current situation, they're now out of work because the company had to downsize. And the easy thing is just to sort of go after it for the money or the status, or those kinds of things. But it's ultimately not fulfilling. Whereas I think what we want to do in our work is do something that's fulfilling, like some match between what you want and the value you offer, where people go, oh, wow, that's amazing that you offer that value, because that's the problem we've got that you can help us solve. So I often find I need to spend quite a bit of time with people getting really clear about what it is they want. Like if I was the genie and I could give you your dream role, you know what I mean by your dream role? Like the job where you get paid. Yeah, the job you get paid to do it, and you think, I'd do this for nothing. That job. But it's not which company or which industry or whatever the job title is. It's like, what are the ingredients of that job that you're looking for? So you get really clear about those ingredients. Then you can start to think, okay, now what's the value I've got that could help me get that? And talk to people in the market about that. It's a different way of thinking about how you get your dream job and get fulfilled in your work. But I'm with you. We spend so much time at work. You don't want to do, not that I haven't done it in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you got to do when the family's young sometimes. But yeah, it's ultimately cost you your health and your aliveness and, just the fulfillment that it robs you of.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think we're all, multiple times in life be facing a question of, do I follow the money or do I follow the kind of where my heart is, or where I feel like I'm going to be happier? And, all the times that I've chosen my happiness, I always end up achieving the money outcome later on. Of course, the moment is difficult. The moment is, it's like jumping off the plane. You don't know whether you're going to, make it, but I guess it comes down to faith, right? Like being able to kind of trust that, it will work itself out. Like God will look after me somehow. Yeah. So one of my next question for you is like, what are the qualities it takes to be a good leader? Like I just mentioned, kind of like having faith, having belief that, things will work out. Because I do think that as a leader, you need a bit of trust, right? You need a trust in the person or trust in life in kind of for it to work out. Are there any other traits that you think is important for a leader?
Yeah, well, there's a stack of them. People would get a lot from the book that I wrote, Leadership's Changing the Game. I think we're going to have a link to that in the show notes. The way I talk about it is not so much the traits, but the stages of influence that I think leaders go through. And the first one I've already mentioned, which is you need to reinvent your strengths. So if you're a good problem solver, your new problem is people. So, you've got to build muscle in how do you solve the people problem. You build your influence further. You want to get good at causing results. That's, a multitude of traits that go with that about encouragement and getting the best out of people. But you want to be able to make big commitments, the stretch commitments. We've been talking a fair bit today about how leadership takes you outside the comfort zone. Well, it's that ability to make some big commitment, put that out there in the future, that at the time you say it, you're not really too sure how you're going to accomplish that. They're the ones where you got to stretch yourself and find something you didn't know you had, right, to be able to achieve it. you also got to be able to paint a picture of the future. Sometimes that's people just got a vision and then they do a poster and they put it on the wall. But no, you've got to paint a picture of the future that people can engage with. Maybe they even say, "Oh yeah, that's the future. I want to be on that team because I love that future." And then finally, the stages on the influence curve is the ability to give it all away. You spoke before a bit about that leap of faith that you have. You could say it's like the service stage where you kind of think your job as a leader is now to give it over to the team, trust them. I don't mean blindly trust them, but, trust that they're great and they got everything they need and ask questions and so on. But, you're really giving it over to them to accomplish and you're moving on to the next big thing.
Yep.
Do those stages make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it comes to people skill, I guess that's like a big bucket of things too, right? People skill, it's one word, but there's a lot of parts to it. Can you mention maybe the top 3 parts of a people skill?
Yeah. Well, often people talk about it as communication, don't they? Say, oh, you need to be a good communicator. Well, I think that's right. I mean, but maybe you think about it in 2 parts. So, often communication is thought about as just imparting. It's like a one-way thing. I'm going to now tell you what my vision of the future is versus let's listen to your ideas. Let's listen first. Where are you at? What do you see, Lynn? What's possible from where you sit? What are the constraints where you sit? That listening ability as a leader, and often you're listening for as much what's not said as what is said. Yeah, because sometimes you can kind of listen, well, actually people are leaving something out there when they're saying that. And yeah, certainly your ability to communicate is important, like impart a message. But again, you're talking about it with the audience in mind. So many people think about their PowerPoint slide pack and, I'm just going to deliver this talk I've got and do the same with everyone rather than, no, well, I'm talking to Lynn, so what's she interested in and how do I get the message across to Lynn in a way that, she can relate to and sees what's in it for her to do what I want. That ability to communicate as a leader. And I think the sort of final one I'd say is respect. Respect encompasses a lot. You're thinking about that person over there. Who's that person? What's their story? What are they up to in life? Are they really the best fit for this job? Have they got bigger ambitions that I can help them with? It's that kind of caring and respect about, saying please and thank you. And, it seems so obvious when you say it, Lynn, isn't it? But, it's often forgotten about because you're just kind of in the business rush to get the next thing done. Yeah. Once you spend a bit of time, you've got respect for people, well, you'll acknowledge their accomplishments. Some of the great leaders I've seen just do simple things like Friday afternoon, they'll just call people up and say, that thing you did, that really made a big difference. And here's why it helped the business. And thank you so much. Now, it's such a simple thing, but I can't tell you the difference it makes to people.
We think that we need expensive gifts or a fun kind of like a Google workplace. We don't actually need that. I think people ultimately just want to be recognized. And like you said, it's just a simple word of going, thank you, not just a quick thank you, but thank you for doing this, just spending that moment. And so I think from what I hear is that if we just all slow down as leaders or as people, then we have more time to actually digest the information and think of how we can serve the people around us. But we're too rushed, even though our intention is, I care about people. I'm good to people. But if you're too rushed, you just can't.
That's a really great point, Lynn. Yeah, I think you used the word before about patience. It's maybe another way to think about it too is time for reflection. So as a leader, you can't change the game. You can't think of the big strategy if you're in busy emails, meetings, back-to-back, phone calls. There's no time. There's no space for anything new to come in. It's like your computer, isn't it? If the hard drive's full, you can't fit anything else on it. So as a leader, you really need that ability to be able to step back. And to do that, I know I'm preaching as a converted here with you, Lynn, but for other people listening, to do that, you really need a great team around you to be able to free you up so you can do that kind of big picture thinking. That's really your job. The job is not to be busy doing all the day-to-day tasks. Your job is to be thinking about the future and how to take people along there with you.
Yeah.
So time to step back and reflect is really critical.
Love that. So Brian, can you tell me about that book that you have for people?
So it's called Leadership's Changing the Game. The subtitle is The Transition from Technical Expert to Leader. For listeners on your podcast, viewers on your podcast, there'll be a link to the lockdown library where they can get a free copy of that, along with several other books from other thought leaders. The alternative is to go to my website. Do you want me to mention that?
Yep.
So my website's the Donovan Leadership, all one word. So DONOVAN leadership.com.
Awesome. Can't wait for that. And I really love that you're an executive coach, but you're coaching them in a way that I know they're going to come out feeling happier as a leader because they're going to have more free time, respect from people around them. And yeah, like you said, from all your experience, that it's going to drive them much more better result than trying to get the quick fixes.
That's right. That's the big thing at the end there, and they'll get bigger results. The thing that I talk to people about is let's play for a result that at the time you say it, you're not sure how you're going to be able to accomplish that. Yeah. That's when a coach can be valuable to help you achieve something you didn't know you could achieve. And you'll surprise yourself later and go, wow, I found something I didn't know I had.
Yeah, and when it comes to that kind of, I guess, as a leader, no one is there to tell you that you are doing things wrong too. Like the team is sometimes too scared to confront you. But when you're working with the coach, I guess it's like you're able to go, here's my problem, but the coach will be able to go, well, it's actually because of these kind of leadership skill that you're lacking, but you can't see that, so you can't fix it. So yeah, I highly recommend.
I'm going to put that on my website, what you just said.
Yeah, you can't see it yourself. So that coach is awesome.
And it's lonely at the top. Who do you trust? Because internal, it's a bit hard to find people to talk to, whereas you talk to a coach, say in my case, I don't want your job. I'm not my own business. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. But someone you can trust that you can talk to that'll have your interest at the best heart.
Yeah. Thank you. So I have two questions left for you. One is, what does a kind boss mean to you?
Well, interesting that you've called your podcast The Kind Boss. It sounds very simple to the gentle art of leadership. So to me, it means similar things. That kind of kindness, that gentleness will get you the best results. So it's not, what it doesn't mean to me is, we'll all just stand around and hug each other and it'll all be lovely and nothing happens. No, it's in service of some big results that you get the greatness out of people.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you is, what do you want people to remember Brian for?
Well, I think I'd like to remember me for causing leadership on the planet. I reckon leadership's the thing that is going to make the difference in any sphere of life as we can think about it, Lynn. So, I want to be remembered for, well, he made some difference to that, left a legacy of leaders who can, really change the game in whatever sphere they work in. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, the more leaders we create, then they will then be inspired to create other leaders, which means there's a ripple effect of just amazing, kind, gentle leaders.
I love you. That's right.
Thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time to sit with me and answer all those amazing questions. So yeah, thank you.
It was great fun, Lynn. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. We hope this interview has inspired and humbled you to be a kind boss. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what you think about our show. If you have any questions, please visit 𝙤𝙤𝙙𝙬𝙤𝙪.com. Until then, stay kind and spread love.